I'm Carson Horn, and it's time for another edition of Talkin' Tumors, where I break down the latest happenings in Auburn athletics. Let's get rolling. You ask, why are you nervous, Carson? I'm nervous because it's prediction time. The Auburn football season is almost here, which means we have to make predictions, and we're going to do it on this episode of Talkin' Tumors. We have a loaded show to get to today, a ton of Auburn football content. We have to discuss fall camp. We have to talk about the first scrimmage, which took place this past Friday. We've got to make predictions for the season, most importantly. And then also, we've got to cover some Auburn basketball content here in August. Auburn added another player out of the blue. We'll talk about all of it on this edition of Talkin' Tumors. I am Carson Horn. Thank you so much for tuning in today, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. If you haven't already, I just ask you would just like and subscribe to the show. It will mean a great deal. I appreciate it. So let's get started. Let's start out with just talking about fall camp. Let's talk about some observations that I've had so far in camp, and then we'll also dive into some takeaways from the scrimmage and some of the comments that Alex Golesh had after Auburn scrimmage on Friday afternoon. So if you're listening to this episode, early in the week, this scrimmage happened last Friday. Auburn, the players will be starting class this upcoming Monday. So they'll be leaving the hotel they've been staying at. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But let's just start off with just some general observations that I've had from watching this fall camp. Unfortunately for Auburn fans, there have been quite a few fall camps to observe over the recent years, with Hugh Freeze to Brian Harsin to Gus Malzahn and now to Alex Golesh here. I would say the intensity of an Alex Golesh fall camp is different than we've seen in the past. I think the energy has been really high for the most part, despite the sweltering heat here in Auburn, Alabama, and the high humidity. I think in the past, especially under DJ Durkin the last couple of years, Auburn's defense had that energy and had that intensity, but I don't think you always saw it. I quite frankly, I know you did not see it from the offense as well in practice, and it seems to be that is different this year. And part of it, I think, is because of the culture that Alex Golesh is establishing. He's not going to settle for anything less than that. From high energy, high intensity on both sides of the football, the vibes are certainly different. From, you can go and point to the music that is played in practice, to the language that is used by the coaches. Look, every coach has a different style. I'm not here to hate on any one coach's style of coaching, but it is different, and the energy is noticeably different. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention Byron Brown playing a huge part in that for the offense. When you have a leader that brings the energy, that brings the intensity like he does, that helps, and that helps in a big way, and I think that's been a big reason why Auburn's offense has had better energy this year, along with Alex Golesh and this staff. Does this guarantee that Auburn's going to have a success or that they're going to be a great team? No, but it is, I think, a step in the right direction. It's a step I believe Auburn needed to take this year. So that's something I observed right off the bat as soon as fall camp started this season. And that was something that jumped out to me that was different from the past. As far as the hotel stuff goes, I know it's been a little bit since I had an episode, so I know this was big drama here on social media for a couple of days when this first got announced. So Auburn, if you didn't know, somehow you missed the news. Auburn has stayed at the a hotel during fall camp. Alex Golesh explained that he had done this at USF, and that was the reason he wanted to keep doing it at Auburn. He felt like it was a great way to eliminate all distractions and only be focused on ball. He kept the team together, and they were staying in hotel rooms together, and they were doing everything together. So they weren't going back to their houses. The logic made sense when Alex Golesh explained it. He explained that used to everybody lived in the dorms, and so back in 2013, or I believe South Donahue dorms were built then. Around that time, all the athletes be staying in the South Donahue dorms on campus at Auburn. That's no longer the case now. Maybe some freshmen live in the dorms, but pretty much everyone else is going to be living, especially with NIL money now, is going to be living off campus in very nice living areas. And this is a way to keep everybody together by going to a hotel and trying to eliminate some of those distractions. They are busing back and forth between the hotel to the football facility and then back at the end of the day when they are finished up. And it's also huge for team bonding. If you've ever been on trips with others. If you go on, you think of like church trips, you ever did anything like that, that the relationship that you build when you have to live with someone for days, in their case 2 weeks, you get really close. You form bonds. You make memories that will last a lifetime. There's still, I think of stories with my friends that, from trips that, I took as a teenager in high school. Those are things that you'll never forget. Those are bonds that you make, and it can bring you closer. So someone who big on routine, who doesn't like to be taken out of their comfort zone, that's my personality. I'm sure a lot of the players have that. I also understand the benefit of doing what this team has done, and I think it will be beneficial to help them develop a stronger culture. And I think it's even more important in the transfer portal era that we live in now, when you're talking about the amount of new guys, the number of new guys on a roster, when Auburn has 40 plus new guys on this roster. Doing something like this allows you to hopefully build a better culture and draw closer to your teammates. And the closer the team is off the field, the better chance they'll be closer on the field, and it'll hopefully make your team better. Look, you can have the closest team in the world. If they don't have the talent, it doesn't matter. But hopefully it'll make them a little bit stronger when adversity hits, because adversity is going to hit. So I understood some of the criticism, like, well, why are you taking them out of their homes? Why are you spending money on this? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever some of the disagreements were on it, I understand. But overall, I thought this was probably a good thing for Auburn and a neat thing. And let me just say this. Auburn, by far, this wasn't a new Auburn idea. A lot of other teams do this as well. But there was some criticism that, they're staying at a suite. This isn't tough. It's like, yeah, they're staying at a nice place, but you're still out of your homes. And, no one loves to be out of their home for 2 weeks, I don't think, at least most people. Having to sleep with someone, sleep in a hotel room with someone else, not necessarily the most enjoyable experience of your life. But I think this will be good for the team. As far as some general takeaways separate from the scrimmage, I'll have some thoughts on that from what Alex Golesh said. But he had a quote earlier in fall camp that struck me and was encouraging when Alex Golesh said, quote, "We are further ahead on both sides than I thought we would be." So that was, I think, around after the first couple of practices of fall camp, Alex Golesh made that quote. And that should be encouraging to Auburn fans. You have a new offensive system. You have a ton of new players. However, I do think the number of USF guys that came over has helped make that transition a little bit more smooth. And I think that's probably why Auburn's a little bit further ahead. As far as install goes, I think later on, Golesh essentially said they were pretty much done as far as install, which I was a little bit surprised about it. But they had installed everything in spring, and they were ready to just rock and roll. Now, that doesn't mean they've got everything down pat. Of course not. But that was a big deal, that you got your install done for the most part, and that you're able to rep and get ready for the season. I think that plays a big role into why this team is further ahead than he thought. If you had a new quarterback in this system this year, if you had a completely new offense than Alex Golesh and this offense coaching staff had the previous year, I don't know if you'd be as far as ahead. And then also defensively, retaining DJ Durkin helped with that. Retaining a good number of pieces on the defensive side of the football help with that. Another takeaway, tight ends. Tight ends are so vital to this offensive operation and to what Alex Golesh wants to do. Gus Malzahn used tight ends a good bit in his offense as far as blocking went. He did not utilize tight ends in the passing game. Alex Golesh wants to do both. And if you look at, always pay attention to what coaches emphasize. When Alex Golesh got here at Auburn, he emphasized the tight end room. And that was necessary because Auburn's tight end room last year was atrocious. But you also notice that he went and got 5 guys for this tight end room, and each was slightly different, a slightly different type of player. And that's because he wants to use different tight ends in different situations. So you've got Jake Johnson, who will likely be the starter and can do a lot of things. But you've also got guys that are more geared towards blocking. You've got guys that are more geared towards receiving, like Jonathan Eccles, who came over from USF. You got Arliss Boardingham. There are multiple options because Alex Golesh wants to utilize a lot of tight ends in a lot of different formations, and they're going to play a big role in both blocking and receiving. And that's also his baby. He was a tight ends coach at one point before he became an offense coordinator and then eventually a head coach. So this is a big deal to him, and you've seen that emphasized, and I expect tight ends to play a very big role in Auburn's offense. Accountability. That's another takeaway that we've had from fall camp. Earlier in fall camp, Alex Golesh mentioned he was doing push-ups when receivers were dropping balls. Just an accountability thing that, hey, If everybody else is doing them, I'm around. You make that mistake in front of me, I'm taking accountability for that action as well. I don't think coaches have to always do what players do. In fact, they don't need to do everything that a player does. They're not the players. However, it's a servant leadership type of look for Alex Golesh, and it certainly, I think, will be encouraging to the players to see their head coach suffering consequences for their actions. It can be a motivating factor as well. So I like that from Alex Golesh. Some of those things can be gimmicky sometimes and a little bit cheesy. We know Brian Harsin has some cheesy stuff, running the bleachers with the team and stuff like that. But each coach just has to be themselves. And Alex Golesh is undeniably himself. And I think he is serious about this, and this isn't a gimmicky thing. So I thought that was neat. Offensive line. I'll talk more about offensive line in a little later on in the show, but just some general thoughts. So Ty Buster is a guy who is going to be out for, Alex Golesh thought, maybe about 6 games. They don't know exactly how long with an injury. That's massive. That really stinks for Auburn's offensive line. Let me tell you why. Ty Buster in the spring was running with the one. So Stanton Ramil, who is back, the transfer from Michigan State, is likely to start at one of the offensive tackle positions. But Ty Buster with Stanton Ramil out in the spring was starting at offensive tackle. And Ty Buster also has the ability to play some guard. So he's a swing man, can play tackle, can play guard. He would have been in the offensive line rotation even if he did not start. He was going to provide quality depth. So losing him is massive. Hopefully he can get back a little bit sooner than they maybe expect and can still play a role for Auburn this season. But this one hurts. Auburn is not killing it with offensive line depth, at least not with quality depth there. So really need him to get back healthy and need everyone else to stay healthy. As far as where things stand as position battles along the offensive line, right now, it seems like 3 guys have their spots locked up. And those are Cole Best at center, the transfer from USF, veteran guy. He knows the ropes of the offense. He understands it really, really well. That's an important piece. We've talked about him. Joe Simmons, the transfer from James Madison. He'd been at left and right tackle. It looks like right now Auburn has decided to go with him at left tackle. But either way, he is going to start for this Auburn team. And then Stanton Ramil, as I just mentioned him, the transfer from Michigan State. He's going to start at one of the tackle positions right now. It looks like right tackle. And then after that, the guard positions are up for grabs. Auburn went with a certain group of starters in the scrimmage on Friday. That might change by the next scrimmage. Those things are still being sorted out. Alex Golesh did mention that he said they might rotate 7 to 8 guys at the position to start the year, which really, I believe you need 8 guys. You need 8 guys who you believe can play in the SEC along the offensive line going into the season because injuries are going to happen. If you got 8 guys, I would feel pretty good if I'm Auburn, if they are quality players, and that we won't know until we get to the season and actually see them put the pads on in real live games. But those are some general takeaways I have so far from fall camp as we inch closer to game week. But I did mention the scrimmage, and I did want to I do have some notes from that scrimmage based on some things Alex Golesh said. Unfortunately, I was not able to watch it, as neither were most of you. Only a few select few individuals were able to watch the scrimmage. But from what Alex Golesh said, it was a sloppy scrimmage. Now, what do we make of that? I don't make too much of that. It was the first scrimmage. Now, I'm not the head coach, so of course, Alex Golesh is going to have some different takeaways from that, understandably. However, I don't make a big deal out of it. Usually these first scrimmages are sloppy, but you're going to hold your team to a very high standard. And he called this team, they look like a young team, which you may sound, well, kind of are. But that's not the way Alex Golesh views his team. He views his team as a veteran team, and that's fair because you got a fifth-year quarterback in Byron Brown. You got a fifth-year senior center in Cole Best. You've got some other veteran players along this offensive side of the football and the defensive side of the ball. He expects more from this team, and he's right that this team is certainly veteran in ways that they played a lot of football, but it hasn't necessarily been at Auburn for a lot of these guys. So I'm not overly concerned about that. Hopefully things will be tighter in the second scrimmage for Auburn, but that one wasn't a surprise. He also said the team needs to be humble. I think foreshadowing that, hey, some heavy criticism is coming when we look at this film. We've got a lot to clean up. Again, that's to be expected. Things shouldn't and aren't going to be pretty in your first scrimmage. But the humble part of it is, hey, you got to be willing to receive coaching. That's not easy. Getting criticized is not easy. That's against human nature. No one wants to be criticized. But you have to understand the criticism is meant to make you better. And I think you have to humble yourself, and that's what the message Golish was trying to get across to his teams. He was explaining that to the media, which was an interesting way to put it. Essentially coming in and saying, yeah, we're about to just get all over these guys. Like, instead, wording it and say, hey, we need our guys to be humble, which I thought was an interesting approach. He did mention there were too many pre-snap issues with the offense, and I wanted to comment on that because Auburn is going to be an extremely up-tempo offense. That's the way Alex Golesh runs, and Auburn has not done much of that since Gus Malzahn. Hugh Freeze did a little bit of it, but not a ton. Alex Golesh, as much as he can, and Joel Gordon, the offense coordinator, are going to have an up-tempo offense. That is why pre-snap is so important. Being able to get lined up, being able to get lined up fast, not false starting, making sure you're getting on the line. Golesh mentioned false starts. He mentioned alignment. Those things are vital. If you're going to be effective as an up-tempo offense, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to get in position and get set and get ready quickly. Because if you can do that, you can force the defense to make some of those pre-snap penalties. But if you cannot, you end up hurting yourself and you end up slowing down your momentum. So the pre-snap, getting set, getting lined up, very, very important. And those are issues that have to be fixed first and foremost before anything else, because you immediately shut yourself down if you cannot get that right. Byron Brown had a pretty good day according to Golesh. I think he had a touchdown run, maybe a touchdown pass as well. Only did a couple drives, I think, with the first team offense. Overall, this was, I thought, the most positive comments I've heard about an Auburn offense in a scrimmage in quite a few years. Quite frankly, probably since the Gus Malzahn era. Now, that may not be saying much because, yet again, it is still a scrimmage. However, in scrimmages that Auburn has had in the past, you always hear, man, the defense just dominated. And, you're like, okay, with scrimmages, you're playing against yourself. So if one side does well and the other side does poorly, you're like, I don't know how to feel about that. It sounds like this one pretty evenly matched, which ultimately is probably your desire as a coach. You want to see the offense win some. You want to see the defense win some. So the fact that there were some positives for Auburn's offense in a scrimmage, it felt foreign because we just haven't heard that very much in the past. So again, it may not mean much. Auburn's offense may stink. I don't know. But it is different from the past, and that's why I wanted to highlight that. As far as the criticism of the defense, Alex Golesh, the main thing from him was they missed too many tackles. Coaches are really scared to, well, I guess I should say scared. Coaches are hesitant to practice tackling too much in this day and age in college football because your depth isn't the same as it once was pre-transfer portal era. So coaches are very concerned about injuries, and that is completely fair. However, I'm a firm believer in you can't get better at something if you don't practice it. And Alex Golesh essentially said as much in the post-game or post-scrimmage press conference that, hey, we're going to have to practice tackling because our open field tackling was horrendous. That's going to be important come week one. You're going to deal with some good athletes against Baylor, so you're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to get better. I still think back to the Navy-Notre Dame game. I don't know why this pops in my head, but from the COVID year when Navy and Notre Dame played in like week 0, and it was just atrocious. I think Notre Dame won like 59-0 or something. Like Navy was so bad. And I remember after that game, the Navy head coach, he was just, well, we literally have not tackled in practice at all. And well, there you go. I mean, you don't practice something, you're not going to be good at it, and you're not going to get better at it. So, yes, you can tackle dummies all you want to. It's different when it's an actual live human being out there. So, Auburn's just going to have to take that risk and going to have to tackle to get better at that. And there's some more positives on the defensive side. Alex Golesh mentioned the versatility in the secondary as that has been standing out. That's a positive. Auburn has a lot of options at safety, especially at all the safety positions. Corner is the position that everyone's most concerned about, and I myself am concerned about, but you have options there, and that is good. Champ Anthony can play there. He can play anywhere in the secondary. So that position battle is going to continue on at the corners position and at all the secondary positions, but you've got options, which is good. Overall, Alex Golesh said the goal is to play around 20 players on the defensive side of the ball. Bontrell King-Williams said this past week that he wants to have about 8 guys he can roll on the interior defensive line. You're going to have 4 to 6 guys maybe on the edge that you can rotate with, probably closer to around 4 at the edge position to rotate with. And then the secondary, you're going to have plenty of options, I think, there. So let's get to some player standouts now from fall camp. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. We could list more than I have down here, but these are just a few guys that have stood out that have been mentioned by some of the coaches from fall camp, starting with local running back out of Auburn, Alabama, Omar Mabson. What a story Omar Mabson is. Just incredible stuff from him to be a guy that reclassified, came to Auburn last season, undersized running back, not really expected to do much, and then has now put himself in prime position to be running back 2 for this Auburn team over a running back in Bryson Washington from Baylor, potentially, who came over, was an 1,000-yard rusher. Really, really impressive stuff. It speaks highly of Omar Mabson's character and also who he is as a player. He's been standing out. Jared Smith is another one that is standing out. This one's big. This one, I can't emphasize how important Jared Smith is for this Auburn defense this season. He has big shoes to fill with Keldrick Falk leaving at the defensive end position. It's not fair to expect Jared Smith to be Keldrick Falk 2.0, but he needed to take another step. He's put on good weight. Can he be a really good run defender at defensive end along with the pass rusher? I thought he showed a lot of skill in pass rushing situations last year. Run defense was a question mark for him. This is good for Auburn that so far he's been standing out, that he's having a good camp. He needs to have a massive year for Auburn to reach its full potential. Chaz Nimrod at receiver. I could have picked a number of receivers. A lot of these guys have had pretty good camp, the transfer receivers from USF. But Chaz Nimrod's been one that was highlighted by both Joel Gordon and Alex Golish early in camp as being kind of the lead dog of the receiving corps. So Chaz Nimrod, you're not familiar. He is a transfer from USF. However, he started his career at Tennessee, so has SEC experience. And he's just been a little bit banged up in recent years. However, he's got the potential to be a really good receiver for Auburn this season. Perhaps one of my favorite players on this team, really guy I root for, DeMarcus Riddick, the Chilton County native. He had a really good freshman year, then last year just dealt with injuries, and he played sparingly. You could tell he was never healthy. He had, I think, shoulder braces on both shoulders. He had surgery on both of those, or at least one of those. He's back. He's healthy. He's not having to wear the shoulder braces, at least not right now. And he's having a really good camp, and I'm rooting for him to be able to stay healthy, because if he is, he can play an important role and add depth to this linebacker room, which we know is loaded and one of the best, if not the best, linebacker rooms in not just the SEC, but in the country. So DeMarcus Riddick, having him ready to go and back is really good for Auburn. Back to the offense, Cole Skinner is one that was standing out, and I'm having to reevaluate my view of him a little bit. So he was a transfer from USF as well, like Cole Best, the center. He was a guard transfer. He was banged up some last year at USF. And when Auburn brought him over, I thought, okay, maybe a little bit of a depth piece, maybe a six-man type of lineman. It looks like he's probably going to start at the guard position for Auburn, and that may not be a bad thing. He's an extremely physical player. He has changed his body. He's gotten bigger and stronger. And it seems like he's had a really good camp so far based on what the coaches have shared here about him. And then Cody Sigler, the transfer from Arkansas State, an Alabama native, someone who started at West Alabama, then to Arkansas State, and now to Auburn. A guy you want to root for because of his story. Just simply incredible. Looking forward to watching him play this year. He's going to be a disruptor along the interior defensive line for Auburn. And he's just someone that I've had to mention every show, and we'll continue to talk about him. Okay, it's time. I don't know if I'm ready, but it's time. It is prediction time. Auburn season predictions. Here we go. What is Auburn's record going to be? Let me give you a ceiling. Let me give you a floor, and then I will give you my prediction of where I think this team ultimately lands this year. The ceiling for this team, I think, is 9-3. Again, a ceiling is supposed to be something that is not expected, but something that is technically possible. Like, that's how I guarantee ceiling. Like, I want to make sure I get the tip-top number that I can get that is theoretically possible. I just don't see a 10-2 being possible with Auburn's schedule. But a 9-3, extremely unlikely, but I would say possible. So, how would that happen? Well, it doesn't happen, I don't think, in any scenario if you don't go 4-0 in the month of September. You go 4-0 in the month of September, and then you can pull off a couple of upsets in October. Maybe you get 2 wins in October, and then you can find a way to get a few more wins 3 wins in the month of November to close out the season. There you go. Easier said than done. Again, I don't expect it to happen. It would take quite a few upsets from Auburn. It would take Byron Brown probably having a near Heisman level season. It would take a DJ Durkin defense playing at an extremely high level yet again, which is probably the most likely part of that prediction. And it would take an offensive line, I believe, overperforming my expectation level for them. And then probably just some good old-fashioned good luck. Again, not impossible, but I think that's the ceiling. However, I would expect that to be unlikely. On the flip side, I think the floor of this team is 5-7. Now, again, when we're talking about floor, I'm not making up scenarios where someone get a major, key players get injured. We're assuming everybody plays for the most part. What is the worst case scenario? That would be 5-7. That would be, hey, maybe you get upset by Baylor in week 1, or maybe you lose to Baylor and Florida even, or maybe you do start out the season maybe like win 3, go 3-1 the first 4 games, but then you go 0-4 in the month of October, and then you are sitting at already 5 losses, as you head into November. You're putting yourself in a tough position at that point. So that's why I look at 5-7 as the floor for this team. You could argue that maybe in a really, really bad scenario, 4-8. But I think if Byron Brown plays all year for Auburn at quarterback and he is healthy, I have a hard time seeing this team being any worse than 5-7 simply because of his level of play that I expect from him, and DJ Durkin's defense. I think at least gets you to that. So I'm setting the ceiling at 9-3, the floor at 5-7. So pretty good discrepancy there for Auburn. Where am I landing? This is tough. Look, each year I usually overshoot it. Usually I'm a little bit more optimistic than I need to be, and I've gotten caught. I don't want that to happen this year, so I'm taking a more cautious approach in my prediction. So criticize me all you want. Those who have a little bit more optimistic outlook on things. It's not that I'm not optimistic about Alex Golesh. I do believe he will be successful here. However, my prediction for Auburn in 2026 is 6-6. Just going 500 with it. Just rolling the dice out there. Let's see what it lands on. I'm going to go 500. I went back and forth. I considered 7-5. I don't see 8-4 happening. I think the October schedule is just brutal for Auburn, and that is why I'm going with 6-6. If Auburn starts out 4-0, I do believe Auburn will at least get to 7 wins. So 4-0, that means beating Baylor. That means beating Florida at home, taking care of business. That also means beating Vanderbilt, winning the game against Southern Miss. So if Auburn can start out 4-0, then okay, you look at that and say you're probably going to win at least 7 games, despite how tough the month of October is. But I think predicting Auburn to go 4-0 in the month of September is just a little bit, I'm not exactly comfortable doing that at the moment. My biggest reason for Auburn going 6-6, or there's 2 reasons. The corners, I am concerned about Auburn's corners, and I feel like that could limit Auburn defensively a little bit if they're not able to play as much man because of the weakness of the corners, along with Auburn's pass rush. Another area I'm concerned with when you're talking about losing guys like Keyron Crawford and Keldrick Falk. I'm not sold on Auburn's pass rush. Then on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line, I have to see it to believe it. I've gotten burned on too many Auburn offensive lines. I am concerned about that room yet again. So I'm playing it safe, going with 6-6. And what I can say is I do have a lot more faith in this Auburn coaching staff under Alex Golesh than I ever did under Hugh Freeze. I believe he will have the team prepared week in and week out. That's not my concern. It just really goes back to the talent level. Is Auburn going to be talented enough to win more than 6 games this year? I don't know. Like I said, I do believe from a coaching standpoint that Alex Golesh will get, and DJ Durkin on the defensive side of the ball will get as much out of this team as you can. They will squeeze all the juice out of the lemon of this football team. But will it be enough to get you to 7, to 8, to even 9 wins? That's where I have my doubts. How would 6-6 make the Auburn fan base feel? Probably, man, I think when you talk to most Auburn fans are looking at it and saying, if we get 7-5, we're going to feel pretty good about that. We're going to feel like, hey, we're headed in the right direction here. So I think 6-6 will leave Auburn fans like, okay, we'll see. Bowl game, I guess that's better than the last several years, but I don't think it'll fire the fan base up. But it also depends on maybe how you do against your rivals, which is another question I have. Can Auburn beat Georgia or Alabama this year? Both games are on the road. And then can Auburn improve in one-score games? That's one thing that I'm really circling this year. If you just flip the script on one-score games in the last 5 years for Auburn, you're talking about a program that's in a lot different of a spot than they find themselves in at the moment. So this is something I'm sure Alex Golesh, he didn't control the previous results, but I'm sure that's something that he is emphasizing, like, hey, guys, we have to be better in the margins. And I know it's something he's emphasized because he has said it. So just, can you be better in one-score games? If you can do that, then, hey, maybe you do surprise some folks and win more games than expected this year. But for now, I'm still in believe it to see it mode. I'm going 6-6. All right. Now let's get to just some non-Auburn, just some overall predictions for the year for the college football playoff, for conference championship predictions. I'm going to go through these fairly quick, but I always do these each year. They're always fun. That's why I do it. I know this is an Auburn show, but it's still fun. Just give your conference championship predictions and college football playoff predictions, but I'll roll through these pretty quick. So just going through the top 12 teams, and I'll mention who I have playing in the conference championship games as I go. So I have Notre Dame at the end of the year. I have Notre Dame being the number one team in the country. I do expect Notre Dame to be really good this year. The number one ranking, though, also takes into account that their schedule is extremely easy this year, and they may in fact go 12-0 in the regular season because of it. So I'm going Notre Dame as the number one team. I'm going Oregon at number two as the Big Ten champion. I have them winning the Big Ten over Ohio State. Oregon has a tough regular season schedule this year. I still think they find a way to win the Big Ten. I have Miami as the winner of the ACC. I just don't see anyone else in the ACC on their level. I have them playing SMU in the ACC championship game, which I have SMU, as you'll find out, at the number 11 team in the college football playoff. But I have Miami at 3 winning the ACC. This one might surprise some folks. At number 4, I have Ole Miss, and I have Ole Miss winning the SEC this season. It speaks to how highly I think of Trinidad Chambliss. I just see him as a legendary player, at just that big of a difference maker, that he is that incredible of a player. I don't anticipate him falling off any without Lane Kiffin. We didn't see that happen in the playoffs. I don't think we're going to see that happen now. I expect him to have a really, really big year this year. Pete Golding, now the head coach, he'll have the defense at a solid enough level that I think they find a way to win the SEC with a couple of losses in there, but I think they win the SEC. Have them at number 4. Number 5, as I mentioned, I have Ohio State, the Big Ten runner-up. At number 6, I have Georgia as the SEC runner-up. I'm not super high on Georgia, but Kirby Smart just knows how to win. He's one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in college football. I think they find a way to get into the college football playoff yet again this year. I have them at number 6. At number 7, I have Indiana. So I don't have Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. However, I still think they have a really good year, and they find their way back into the college football playoff to try to win another national championship. At number 8, I have Texas Tech as the Big 12 winner, despite Brendan Sorsby no longer being a part of the program. I think Will Hammond is able to do enough offensively. I think their defense, yet again, going to be lights out, and Texas Tech finds a way to win the Big 12. At number 9, I have Texas. A lot of people will have Texas as the number one team in the country heading into the year. They probably have the best roster in college football. I just don't see how they miss the playoffs this year. They won't necessarily win the national championship, but they're going to make the playoffs. I would be stunned if not. They do have a really tough schedule. I see them in the playoffs. I think Arch Manning is going to have a really good year. Texas at 9. At 10, this is one of my surprise teams. That's Washington. So after all the drama with Damon Williams, their quarterback, trying to transfer, Washington saying, yeah, no, we're not letting that happen. He's back. He's really, really good. I think Washington just is one of those surprise teams with a really good quarterback that finds their way to sneak into the playoffs with a couple of losses. So I've got Washington at number 10. At number 11, as I mentioned, SMU as the ACC runner-up. And then as the lone G5 representative, or G6 now, I have UNLV and Dan Mullen and Jackson Arnold as the quarterback of UNLV making it into the college football playoff. It's probably going to come down to, Boise State or UNLV. Boise State usually gets the better of UNLV. But in this situation, I thought, hey, why not? Why not let Dan Mullen beat Florida to the college football playoff? Florida's who fired him. And Jackson Arnold beat Auburn to it. Just thought that would be a funny, maybe a little bit of a dark prediction there if you're an Auburn or a Florida fan. But I honestly do legitimately think that Dan Mullen's going to do a really good job with Jackson Arnold at UNLV and run an offense that fits his skill set. And then I'm not going to do game-by-game predictions. I'll just give you my semifinal and my national championship game. So in the semifinal matchups, I've got Notre Dame versus Indiana. That would be really, really fun. And for the state of Indiana, we saw that in the first round of the playoffs a couple years ago when Indiana and Notre Dame played then. I think that would be a fun semifinal matchup. And then Oregon and Miami in the other semifinal matchup. And I have Oregon and Notre Dame in the national championship, and I have Oregon winning it all. Dan Lanning, I think, is one of the best coaches in the country. He's going to get a national championship. He's going to win one. And I think it comes this year. Really talented roster. Dante Moore could be the best quarterback in college football this season. I expect Oregon to win the national championship. I really do think it comes down to a number of teams. Oregon, Notre Dame, Miami, Ohio State, potentially Indiana, Texas. I think it's going to come down to that group of teams, but I'm going to go Oregon. Okay, to wrap up the show, let's talk a little Auburn basketball. Let's talk about Greece and then also about the new roster addition that Auburn made. I'm going to take a sip of water here real quick before we get into this final segment. We've been going for a while now. I appreciate you hanging in there if you are still watching or listening, but we're about to wrap this thing up. But I did want to get this topic in there to talk about this Auburn basketball team and what we saw in Greece. Auburn played 2 games. It's been, I think, a little over a week in Greece. It looked like they had a fantastic time there. The first game kind of played it true. So, meaning by true, I mean they played the starters a good number of minutes and really didn't play some of the walk-ons as much. Now, I will make a note that Auburn was without 4 players who are expected to be a part of that rotation this year. In Kimball, Freeman, and Montas, and Narcisse Ngoy. Those 4 did not play. Kimball and Freeman were both out with injuries. Apparently, Montas and Narcisse Ngoy not eligible yet. Talk more about that in a second, but those 4 did not play. But Auburn won the first game 92-71, and then Auburn in the second game didn't play the starters as much. Kevin Overton really didn't play in the second half at all of that second game. DeHaa didn't play after the first quarter. So things went differently. In that game, Auburn lost that game 70-68. I thought Kevin Overton and DeHaa both looked good. I thought they both played well. Those are your 2 stars of this team. They are going to be your leaders. It was good to see KO was really hot from 3 in that first game. He played well. DeHaa had a ton of assists in there. Thomas Dowd showed that what I think we're going to see from him a lot this year, and that he is going to be an extremely important player. He's someone that you talk about, hey, this guy makes winning plays. That's who Thomas Dowd, I think, will be for this Auburn team. He had 28 rebounds in the 2 games. He had 18 in game 2 in the 2 games in Greece. Really impressive. He didn't do a ton offensively. I think he has more of an offensive skill set than maybe he showed here. But, man, he had a really, really impressive game on the boards with rebounds. And this one, overall, from the little bit that we got to see on a stream on YouTube, it seemed like a team that's still, figuring things out and figuring out their identity. Shot a lot of threes. I thought played in transition a decent bit, which I think will continue this upcoming year. Last year, we thought the team played at a faster pace. Really didn't work out that way. I think this team this year would like to do that, and we'll see if they're able to. But hard to judge. I also don't know what the talent, how do you compare that Greece team to a college basketball team? What level are they on? I don't know. It's also August, and Auburn was without 4 rotation players, so trying not to take too much from it, but it was fun to see Auburn basketball on the court, to see some of those new guys out there, like I said, like Dowd, like Olsen, like Caleb Williams, a freshman, Buki Oboye. So just seeing some of those new guys out there was fun, along with KO and DeHaa. And then, as I mentioned before this trip, really great opportunity for team bonding, and really could be massive. As I was talking early in the show about football and the bonding opportunity those guys have by staying together in a hotel. Same goes for this trip. This was a really incredible opportunity for this team to build better chemistry. We know last year's team, not great chemistry. This year's team needs to be better in that regard. This was a great opportunity for them to build that chemistry. I think it'll be beneficial for them, and it seemed like they had a wonderful time, and that was good to see. I love the video of Stephen Pearl dancing with the team one of the nights there. That was cool. And then the news that we got as this team was getting back to Auburn was that Auburn's adding someone else to the roster. and that is Colby King, 6'1" transfer guard from Utah State. So Auburn will be his fifth school in 5 years. He had been around the block, which always makes me a little bit nervous. But he had 7.5 points per game last year at Utah State, 1.6 assists per game. So you're probably asking yourself, like I was asking myself when this happened, okay, why? So first off, let me give you some context about college basketball and college athletics if you haven't been paying attention. Been a ton of lawsuits about guys getting fifth years. So the NCAA came out with a new rule that said, hey, now everybody gets 5 years to play 5 years. No more red shirts. But they said it's not going to apply to guys from this previous season. It's going to start this upcoming year, starting with this football season moving forward. So that meant all those seniors from last year in college basketball, it didn't apply to. Well, of course, all those players were like, what? I mean, we want another year of college basketball too. This isn't fair. So they've all sued. And a lot of them have won preliminary injunctions, which gives them status to be able to play for now. Colby King is one of those players who was granted a fifth year by a judge. He among with many others. So right now he is eligible. That does not mean he will be eligible for the season. This could still get appealed and overturned. But as of now, he is eligible. I think Auburn, so why did Auburn add him? I guess to answer that question, my guess is just more depth at the guard position. So we know that Kimball, the transfer guard from Vanderbilt, is coming off of some injuries. He missed all last season at Vanderbilt, and then he also has had an injury this offseason. So I think Auburn was a little bit nervous about their guard depth because of that. And so when Auburn had the opportunity to go and add someone to come in there and compete with Simon Walker and with Caleb Williams and Blake Michalek and George Kimball, Auburn took advantage of that opportunity. Do I expect Colby King to be a difference maker? No. But that addition probably allows Stephen Pearl to sleep a little bit better at night knowing you have another option. It makes me feel a little bit better about the depth at the guard position because that was something I was concerned about. Because, again, it was really thin after Tahad and KO, and especially if Kimball was banged up. So I think that was likely the reason. Again, this is all just a theory. Nobody's been able to ask Stephen Pearl about the addition and why he made it yet. So we'll find out more, I'm sure, later on. But that is my guess. Add more competition there with Simon Walker, Blake Michalek, Caleb Williams, along with George Kimball to this guard group overall. So Auburn back from Greece, and now it's time to lock in. So now they'll get ready, start preparing for the season. They'll have about 2 months before the first exhibition game in mid-October against Florida State. So they'll probably have a little bit of some time off where they really get going. When preseason practices will start, I believe, in early September. But it seems like it's been a good summer, and it seems like the Greece trip was good. I don't expect the addition of Colby King to mess up the chemistry. That is one, concern that will be fair to have. It's just one addition, though. If you've already got a really good culture established, adding one more player in there, even if it's later than you would like, I don't expect to mess things up. So I think Auburn will be in good shape there. Okay, I've said a lot. My voice is worn out. I hope that you all have enjoyed it. We had a lot, as I mentioned at the start, to get to in this episode with Auburn football and Auburn basketball. Fall camp continues to roll on for Auburn football. Game week will be here before we know it. So we'll continue to deliver content out here on Talkin Tumors. So make sure you're subscribed and following at Talkin Tumors on X for the latest information. So thank you all so much for listening, and we'll be back with another edition soon. Thank you for listening to Talkin Tumors. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow at Talkin Tumors on social media so you'll never miss an episode. War Eagle.